Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate all of you. Yes, my mic is in front of me. Working on having the sound come through a little better, seeing if this makes any difference. Today is January 28th, 2023. It is a Saturday, I think. It better be. Yesterday was Friday, today better be Saturday. Anyway, yeah, one of my daughters tells me that I find things funny that she doesn't. So, let me know if you find my sense of humor funny or not. In the comments, that would be an interesting thing to do. Today I want to talk about the word ready. There's a big, huge difference between the way ready was prior to, let me do this a little bit and see if that works. Prior to my accident and after my accident. And there's also a difference in the way I get ready now. So, dictionary.com, completely prepared or in fit condition for immediate action or use is the definition I'm going to use today. Completely prepared. So, the trauma that I suffered through as a child left me in a position to where I constantly was on guard. Therefore, I was constantly ready for the next thing. Constantly ready to be there if my younger siblings needed me. Constantly ready to make sure I was at school on time because that was my responsibility to make sure that I was up and ready. So my alarm clock was always set at an hour or two prior to me needing to leave so that I would have enough time to get ready. My schoolwork, my homework was always done at school before I went home, unless it was a project. And that way, when I went back to school the next day, I was ready. Once I had kids, I was still on guard. I looked around everywhere. I was constantly looking for danger. I constantly felt like somebody was watching over me, like my kids could get snatched. And my mother thought that I had paranoia schizophrenia like my father because of it. But really, two things attributed to that. One was that I was always on guard because of all the trauma I was going through. It was PTSD. It wasn't paranoid schizophrenia. The other thing, and I didn't discover this until within the last year or two, is that my stepfather that was the cause of all the childhood trauma. I have to be careful with how I say things on YouTube. He actually was living in the same town as I was living in, and only like a mile or two the most down the road from where I was living. And I actually did see him on the streets looking at me. I, was walking my kids outside and thought I'd seen him or thought I'd seen somebody that looked like him. And by the time I got the kids to stop and stay with me, and I turned and looked, he was gone. I couldn't find him. So it was him. He had run off as soon as he realized that I had seen him. Yes, I talk with my hands. I'm part Italian. What can I say? No, I don't speak Italian. But one of my grandmothers was full Italian. So anyway, I was paranoid because I didn't know that he was actually there. I didn't know he was in the same town as me. And one day when my family, I was married at the time, when my then husband was driving our family to church one Sunday morning, we passed by this building, and I'm turned talking to the kids. So I'm in the passenger seat, and I turn and I look and towards the kids, but I notice as we're driving by this building that I could have sworn it was him in the second story window looking out, and he happened to be looking out while we were driving by. I swore that was him. Now, I mentioned this to my mother, who swore that he wasn't anywhere near me. But I only found out a year or two ago that was him, that was his address. Excuse me. And that he was actually there. I was living in constant fear. And yes, there were other times that I thought he was nearby, that I could sense it. It was my intuition. And I didn't know that he was actually there. And my mother denied it. But he was. So I was constantly ready for things to get bad. I knew that our lives had been threatened. So I constantly felt like he was going to come after me if he ever found me without the kids. I don't know why the kids being around me made a difference. But from that time that I was walking the kids and I thought I saw him, it became very difficult for me to go outside with the kids while we lived there. I had a hard time letting the kids outside. We lived inside unless we had to go somewhere. And I knew that he wasn't following us and that he wasn't at the event we were at. Otherwise, the kids and we didn't go outside. I lived in fear back then because I was ready. I was constantly on guard and looking around for the threat in my life. That's what my life was like until I learned that he had passed away. And even then, it took me years to allow my body to settle down from that ready state of always being prepared for the worst that could happen. I was constantly ready. As a mom, I was ready to get up in the middle of the night to take care of my little ones. No matter how tired I was, I did it. I got up, I took care of them because my kids were the reason I wanted to live. I had gotten so depressed that there was one day I wanted to throw me and three of my kids, because that's all I had at the time, out the second story window of the apartment we were living in. And I sat there thinking about it. I was sitting on the couch. I was thinking about going right out the window that was just above the couch. And I thought, what will happen to my kids? How will this affect my kids? And my love for my kids was so strong that I didn't do it. My children at the time were 3, 2, 3, about 18 months, maybe less than 18 months, and newborn. Maybe she was closer to a year. Instead of 18 months, maybe she was closer to 12 months. And newborn. And I wanted to take myself out the window. Postpartum depression wasn't talked about back then. And I didn't figure out until the more recent years that back then I had postpartum depression. But I couldn't do that to my children. So I sat there on the couch thinking, what do I do next? And I thought about taking my 3 children with me. I didn't want them living in this world of fear, because back then my stepfather was still alive. And I thought about taking all 3 of them with me, because I didn't want to leave them without their mother. And I sat there once again thinking about what it would do to them. I fought for them to be there. I nursed them. I got them through illnesses. I loved them with all my heart. So much so that I could not do that to them. My love for my children kept me from killing myself or them. And that's a hard thing to admit. My love for my children kept me fighting for a better life, and kept me fighting to give them a better life. And I've never regretted it. I've never regretted the decisions I made, because every time I made decisions I'm talking about major decisions, like moves and similar type things, I always thought about what it would do to the kids long term. You know, I was ready to be a parent. I took childcare classes in high school. I attended things through the church that taught us how to be better parents. And I took everything to heart. But what I didn't know is that some of those parenting skills that were taught to me were going to be detrimental to my kids. And that they had been not only detrimental to my kids, but were detrimental to me as well. I didn't know it back then, but I know it now. So now, when I have my grandchildren with me, I handle it a whole lot differently than I did with my kids when they were growing up. A whole lot differently. Some people in my life believed, and some still do believe, that people never change from childhood. Who they are in childhood is who they are in their adulthood, and they hold it against them their entire lives. But I'm here to say that I am living proof that people do grow and change. People do learn. But they have to be willing. They have to want to. I didn't like the life I was living. In fact, many years after my stepfather had passed away, sorry for the long pause. Trying to gather my thoughts that are racing, and some of them are like fleeing, and it's like, what do I talk about? And then by the time I decide, it's gone. Those memory issues are getting in the way of me continuing with this story. I am at a blank at the moment. I know I was talking about my stepfather and many years after. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Things were so bad mentally and emotionally for me, even though he was dead. I would cry myself to sleep every night, and I would pray every night, take these horrible memories from me. I didn't know that I was praying for a car accident that would leave me with amnesia, and it would take those memories away. Yeah. Didn't know that. Didn't know. Okay? But that car accident turned out to be an answer to prayer. And not only was it an answer to prayer, but I was able to form a whole new life. I had to relearn everything. Was I ready then? No. I didn't know how to cook. And I had children living in the house who needed me to cook for them. I did not know how to cook. I didn't know how to sew. I had my sewing machine. I had all this material. I had all of these patterns. It was very evident to me that I used to be an avid sewer, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how to drive. I didn't know that I could drive. I didn't know people had last names. No, didn't know they had birthdays either. I found that out when I found my driver's license in my wallet 2 weeks later. And I saw my full name and my birth date. And that's when I realized, oh, my kids have full names. My kids have birth dates. I didn't know my kids' names when I came out of the accident. In fact, I walked into the house and I just listened to them talk to each other. And that was how I learned their names. You know, they called each other by their first names and their nicknames. They didn't call each other by their first and last name. That would have been a little ridiculous. So I didn't know. I honestly did not know people had last names. Didn't know they had middle names. Did not know they had birth dates until I found my driver's license. And I was amazed at the information I found just on my driver's license. Something that we all take for granted every day. So after I found the driver's license and food was getting scarce in the house, I knew I had to drive. And I just decided, well, I've got a driver's license. Apparently I know how to drive. I need to just get in my van and drive because my children need food. And I didn't realize that that was not a wise decision. Thankfully, the grocery store was just a mile down the road and there wasn't a lot of traffic on the road. And no, I didn't cross the yellow line. I stayed in my lane. Didn't know the rules of driving, but I decided I would follow other vehicles and watch what they do. And I was bound and determined to go get food for them. See, I was ready to take care of my kids no matter what. I had a bum arm. I didn't have enough vocabulary. I knew 4-letter words and less after the accident. And I'm not talking about the cuss kind. I'm not talking about the bad words. I'm talking about, like, it hurts. I could tell my doctor that. It hurts. I couldn't explain how it hurt. I couldn't explain anything else. I once, even though my arm was hurting, I once tried to grab a gallon of milk out of the refrigerator. It was a brand new gallon, and I wasn't feeling any pain. I did not feel any pain after the car accident. I now know it's because along my spine, my nerves were pinched, preventing me from feeling pain. And yes, even in my neck. So the pain in my shoulder, yeah, it hurts, but it would be there sometimes and other times it wasn't. And at the time that I went to get the milk out of the refrigerator, it was a brand new gallon, was unopened. I wasn't feeling any pain in my shoulder. And I grabbed the milk and I slid it off the shelf. And the weight of the gallon yanked my arm straight down, fell out of my hand because I had no control over my hand in that moment. And the gallon splattered. Hit the floor with such force that the milk splattered literally all over the kitchen. It went in, like dropping a rock in water. The ripples are going in all directions, circled out from it. And that's what happened with the milk. And I looked down at my arm and it was hanging. It was dangling. And I had I tried to move it. I had no control over it. And that was the day I decided I needed to go out and buy a sling and put my arm in a sling to remind me not to use that arm so that it could heal. Because I didn't know enough to talk to my doctor about it. I didn't even know who my doctor was. I did end up going to a doctor at some point while I still had bruises across my chest from the seatbelt. And it's in the records. Yes, I had seatbelt bruises. Yes, he confirmed that, yes, I had been in a car accident. But, yes, I told him it hurt, and he took x-rays, and it didn't show up on x-rays. And I didn't know that there was a thing called an MRI and that I should have been sent for an MRI. I didn't know that. I didn't know what banks were. I didn't know I had a checking account or that I had a mortgage or that the mortgage was on auto draft until I got the notice in the paper that my mortgage payments had bounced. In the paper? No, I didn't mean in the paper, in the mail, that the mortgage payment had bounced. Didn't know. And I called the bank. And the lady that answered happened to be the lady that had opened up my checking account. And I saw her in the bank frequently. It's a small town. And she explained to me what it was. And she said that was horrible, that I was in the car accident, and told me to let her know if I needed anything. When I found my checkbook, I went into the bank and I saw her. And I told her, I said, I don't know what I'm doing. And she taught me how to do the register, and I had to ask her how to show me. I had to ask her to show me how to add and subtract. I didn't know. I had to relearn everything. So when you're relearning everything, how are you ready? I wasn't. I was not prepared. I was not prepared for what I had to do with the little bit of skills that I was acquiring. I had to relearn how to parent. And I probably wasn't a very good one, though I don't remember much from that time period other than I had to relearn. I had to do it. I had to do it for my kids. My love, yet again, for my kids was strong enough to make me fight through the pain, through the anger. Yeah, I was very angry. I was very upset. Very upset. Losing the memory, losing the use of an arm. I couldn't shower. Not by myself. It was my right arm. I was predominantly right-handed. Now, at that point, I had used my hand to, I knew I could write with my left hand. And after the car accident, because I knew I could write with my, I didn't know at the accident that knew I could write with my left hand, but prior to the accident, I knew I could write with my left hand. And when I could not get my right arm to work, I spent my time picking up the pen and using my left hand to write. And I thought, I'd have to learn how to write with my left hand. And surprise, surprise, I was able, I didn't have to teach myself how to write with my left hand. So that's when I knew that I could write with my left hand. And so I started doing everything with my left hand. But you can only, with your left hand, clean half your head. You can clean your face, you can clean your neck, you can clean the back of your neck. But I could only wash half of my head. It was hard. It was hard. It wasn't easy. I had to learn. And I couldn't hold my hair and put a barrette in it. Today I've got a ponytail. Can't hold my hair with one hand and use the other hand to put a ponytail in. What did I do? How did I manage my hair back then? I used a bandana. I had a bandana. I found a bandana among my stuff. And I took that bandana and I put it on the bed, and with my one hand I rolled it up. And then I tied it in a knot while it was still on the bed, because I could fold one end over the other end, and I could do it with one hand while it was laying on the bed. And then I put it on my head and realized it wouldn't fit. It was too tight. I had to put it back on the bed. I loosened it up, put it back on my head. It was too loose. And I kept doing that over and over again until I found the right consistency, the right tightness. And from that point on, I just came out and I put my bandana on, because I could slip it over my head with one hand. And I wore that bandana for many years. Many years. When I went to college, because of my bad shoulder, I could not carry a backpack. I bought a backpack that was on wheels with a handle, and I rolled my books with my left hand. I did everything with my left hand. I used a computer to take notes because I could type, but I couldn't hold the pencil and take notes fast enough. And I got permission, this was back before colleges let students use their laptops in class. I had special permission to use my laptop in class because of my right arm and because of my memory issues. It took, from the time I got up in the morning until the time I went to bed, 7 days a week to work on my homework from school. And so my kids at this point were teenagers, and I was not an available mom. I wasn't there for them. For one thing, I didn't know how to be a mom, okay? I did remarry. He turned out to be the love of my life. And he passed away just shy of our 6-year wedding anniversary. But he dealt with the kids, he dealt with the house, and he encouraged me to get my degree. He wanted me to get my degree. So I focused on getting my degree. I focused on passing my classes. I learned tips and tricks so that I can pass my tests. I was allowed to take my tests in a special room where I was monitored, and I was allowed double the time for the exams. And I got through. But the cost was high. The cost was high because I wasn't there for my kids. My children were too young to understand the damage that was done to my brain during that car accident. They were too young to understand that I didn't know how to be a parent. I didn't know enough. I had to relearn everything. I was in my mid-30s at the time of the car accident. I had approximately 35 years of information wiped from my brain that I had to relearn. And there were only a few years left of my children living at home. There was no way that I was going to learn it all in that short period of time. No way at all. Most of the information I know today is because they are things I have learned since the car accident. Have some memories returned? Yes. Some memories have returned. Enough to tell my stories. Not enough to know everything that I lived through. Not enough to make me cry to go to sleep at night like they used to. I no longer live in fear that somebody is ready to harm me or my kids, because I know where he's at. I can find his headstone. I've seen it online, but I've seen it. I still don't know everything. It's been 20 years since the car accident. I finally reached adulthood since the car accident. They say I'm 20 years old because I have 20 years of knowledge. Yes, before I started college, I had to relearn how to read. I had to relearn vocabulary. I had to relearn how to do the multiplication table. And I was placed in the lowest math class. And I was so glad I spent all that time prior to starting college relearning math, because I would not have passed that math class if I had not. I would have failed it. Yes, some memories have returned. And I'm more ready now for life because most of my memories are still gone. I might have 20% of my memories. Enough to tell my stories, enough to know how bad it was. And that's all I need. Some of my family members are mad at me for telling my stories. And that's okay. And the reason I'm okay with it is because it was never my intention to tell my stories. It was never my intention to tell my stories. I was always filled with love for my family. And when I say family, I'm not just talking about my children. I'm talking about parents, siblings. And I've always done the best that I could do to be there for them, to show them that I cared. But when you grow up in a toxic environment, and just because just because I spent my time working on myself and bettering myself, doesn't mean that everybody else will work on themselves. I got tired of the way I was being treated. I got tired of being refused to look at family photos. I'm just now realizing that the light is going on and off, and there. It shouldn't do that as much as it was. But I got tired of being mistreated. And I finally decided, you know what? This is all because certain people in the family are afraid for the stories to come out. And so I got brave enough to write the first book. I was scared to write it. And I was only writing about my car accident on. That had nothing to do with the things prior. And I've got family members mad at me that I published that book. But, I'm to the point where I don't care anymore. Because I was ready to move on. I was ready to move forward. I spent, at that point, about 15 years when I started working on it. 15 years of my post-accident life. Trying to put the pieces together. Trying to put my life together. Trying to figure out who I was as a person. And not having the support of my family. And it just did not matter anymore. So I wrote the book. And guess what? My family's still mad at me. It didn't matter whether I wrote the book or wasn't going to write the book. I wasn't even talking about writing a book prior to, I was talking about the idea. I was thinking about it, but I wasn't interested in writing it. I just wasn't interested in facing all of those demons. But here I was, 15 years after the accident, 2022, June 2022, was 20 years. Yes, 20 years since the accident. And I'm working on 2 more books. Am I ready? With my degree behind me, with family relations torn apart enough that I'm not worried about them anymore. I'm ready to write these books. I'm ready to tell these stories. I'm saddened that my accident tore my family apart. I did not know that when I was praying and asking for my memories to be removed, the horrible memories that kept me from moving forward in my life, that it would impact my children the way that it did. Nobody knows that. But it did. It impacted them greatly. I have family members that believe that I was faking it, that I did not really have amnesia, but I have medical records that prove that I did and that I do. I still have memory issues, as evidenced by these videos when I have times where I cannot remember. So I was ready to learn new things, because I had a supportive husband that didn't take advantage of me, and that encouraged me to keep fighting, to keep trying until I get it, who was willing to take over the housework, who looked after the kids and was there for the kids until he was too sick to do that. So, how am I ready now? Do I like having to recall these stories and tell them? No. Am I telling them to hurt my family members or to retaliate against the ones that don't want the skeletons to come out of the closet? No. I tell my stories because there's lessons to be learned from them. Lessons like the importance of family coming together and supporting each other. The importance of being understanding of somebody else. The importance of paying attention to our children's behaviors when they change. And we might not know why, but something's happened. Something changed. And as parents, we're not there all the time with our kids. Maybe we work. Maybe, what happened at school. We cannot always be with our children. We don't know what's going on with them all the time. And unless they open up, unless they have the vocabulary and the skills to tell us what's wrong, unless they feel comfortable talking to us, they won't tell us. And it's still a mystery to us as to why our children are acting the way that they are. And we don't know how to help them when we don't know what's going on with them. So the lesson that parents are not perfect. Parents try their best. Most parents, okay? There are parents that really don't care, but most parents care about their kids. Most parents want to know. Most parents want to help their kids. And even when they do find out what's happening with their kids, they don't know always how to handle it right. Why? Because children do not come with instruction manuals. They just don't. And every single child that we have is different than the child before. Even identical twins, most of them have different personalities. There's a lot that can be learned from the stories I share. A lot. And that's why I'm ready to tell my stories. But I'm not always on time to things. I used to be. Prior to my accident, I used to be. I went to college. How was I on time for that? Because I left the house at 5:30 in the morning, drove to school, went to the cafeteria, and worked on homework or studying for a test until the cafeteria opened. And I kept looking at the clock so that I would not miss my first class. had to, because otherwise I would have been late. If I had left the house in time just for class alone, I would have been late. I would not have made my class on time. I forget to check my planner. I forget to check if I have appointments. I miss appointments. Not all the time, but I still miss appointments. Oh, I don't have any appointments this week. Oh, yeah, right. I do. I just don't think I do. Or I'll look on the wrong week. I miss things. I'm ready for some things in my life, but I'm still not the way I was prior to the accident. And that's okay. This is my new me. This is who I am. I've learned to live with it. And every day I strive to be somebody different. Somebody just a little further along in recovery than the day or the week or the month or the year before. And I'm not devastated over the changes anymore like I was after the accident. I miss my kids. I miss talking to them. I miss my grandchildren every single day. Some parents that are estranged from their adult children send them letters, send them something for them to know. I don't. For two reasons. One is they don't want me having their address. And they are adults and they can make their own decisions. And if that's their decision, I'm going to respect it. I raised my children to be independent, to take care of themselves, and they're doing that. And so in that regard, I succeeded as a parent. But there was a big cost. And I'm not going to say it's all of my children that are like that. It's not. And some of my children have a very busy life. And that's okay too. Because my life is busy. My life is full. I'm not sitting at home boo-hooing every day over missing them, but I do think about them. I think about them in the back of my mind as I'm working all the time. As I'm working on this YouTube video, I'm thinking about my kids in the back of my mind. The ones that I don't see all the time. And think about the ones that I do see, but for different reasons. Like, what weekend is it I'm going to take those grandkids again? And I got a daughter getting ready to move and helping her get ready for that move. And I'll be helping her move and getting set up in the new house. And yeah, there's all different kinds of things going on in my life and in the lives of the people that I talk to. And I don't blame the children that are grown that don't talk to me. I don't blame them at all. Because I know that what we lived through, without the support of anybody else, other than the husband I married after the accident, I understand that for them it was absolutely terrible. But what they don't know is that what I lived through as a child, and I'm not saying my children didn't live through things, they did. But what I lived through was a lot more terrible than what they lived through. And I'm not downgrading what my children went through. But I think that if my children learned that there are much worse things in the world than what they went through, if they look at how hard I tried to change things, that I fought for them, that I was on their side, that I didn't like what was going on, and I changed the circumstances. See, when I was growing up, those circumstances were not changed. I did my best to keep my children in the same school system throughout their growing up years. They did change schools a few different times in their lives. I think less than 5 times in their lives they changed schools. I changed schools 2 to 4 times every year from 4th grade to 12th grade. There was no stability in my life when I was a child. None. And I did my best to keep my children as stable as possible. There was no way that I could have changed everything about my life. There was no way. There was too many dysfunctional things for one person to change in a year or two. There was no way possible. But I did my best. I kept trying. I didn't give up. Even when I felt like throwing myself out the window, I didn't give up. Having a mother that cared was something my children did have. And it was something I didn't have. And that makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference. Children need parents that care. Children need parents that will fight for what is right. Life won't be perfect. Life will never be perfect. Things will happen to our children even when we're not there, even when we're not by their side. But they better have a parent that cares. They better have a parent that wants change, that is going to fight for change, that is going to keep working at it. And my children had that. They had that. There's lots of lessons to learn from my stories. Lots. And that's why I'm ready to tell them. Not to make my mother mad at me or my children mad at me, but because this world needs to be a better place, and we need to care about each other, and we need to give each other support and show each other love. And you may be watching this video and have never met me in person. You don't know who I am. But you know what? I care enough about you to tell my stories. I care enough about you to read my list of worthy words, to show you the changes that reading these words make. And if you haven't seen my previous video about Dr. Emoto and the water experiments, take a look at them. And with that being said, I want you to know that I not only love my children, I love myself enough to want the changes in my life. And when I had no support, my love within me for myself and for my children is what pulled me through and what made me ready to fight to relearn everything. So I know this has been long. If you've enjoyed this, if you've enjoyed listening to the stories, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so that you get more, please. Let me know. Leave me a comment. If you resonated with this, if you've got your own stories to tell, even if you don't feel like telling them, just tell me you understand. Tell me you can associate with the stories. Now for the reading of the worthy words. I'm going to have to move the mic. Let's see here. Move that over a little bit. There we go. Abundance, accepted, acclaimed, accomplished, achieved, active, adaptable, admirable, admired, affluent, ahead of time, all things beautiful, amazing, animating, appealing, approved, assured, attractive, awake, awesome, awestruck, beaming, beautiful, believe, believed, beloved, blessed, blessings, bountiful, brave, brilliant, called, calm, careful, caring, celebrated, certain, cherished, cheerful, cleansed, comedian, composed, content, courageous, creative, creator, dear, delighted, delightful, devoted, distinguished, divine, easy, ecstatic, elegant, encouraged, encouraging, endorsed, energy, engaging, essential, excellent, expectant, exponential, effective, efficient, empowered, energetic, insured, enthused, equitable, esteemed, ethical, experienced, expert, fabulous, faithful, fascinating, favorable, fabulous. I lost my place. Happy, favored, flourishing, fond, fortunate, found, free, friendly, fulfilled, funny, gained, generous, genius, genuine, gleeful, glowing, good, graceful, gratitude, great, growth, happy, harmonious, harmony, healed, healthy, heard, heartfelt, helped, helpful, honored, idea, igniting, imagination immersed, impressive, income, increase, independent, informative, innovative, inspired, inspiring, instinctive, intellectual, intuitive, inventive, joyful, jubilant, knowing, known, kind, knowledgeable, laugh, legendary, light, lovely, life, lovable, love, lucky, marvelous, meaningful, memory, merit, miracle, miraculous, motivated, motivating, moving, natural, nice, nourished, nurturing, open, opportunity, optimistic, overcomer, overjoyed, oxygen, paradise, peace, peaceful, perfect, physically fit, pleasant, plentiful, poised, popular, positive, possible, powerful, prepared, productive, progress, prominent, promise, prosperity, quality, quick, ready, reassured, reassuring, receiver, refined, refreshing, rejoice, relatable, relative, relaxed, reliable, remembered, remembering, repaired, resounding, rested, respected, restored, revived, rewarded, rewarding, right, safe, satisfied, secure, sensational, serene, shifting, skilled, skillful, soulful, sparkling, special, spirited, spiritual, star, stimulated, stimulating, stirring, strong, stunning, succeeded, successful, sunny, super, supported, surprising, terrific, thankful, thorough, thrilling, thank you, thriving, timely, tranquil, transformational, transformed, triumph, trusting, truthful, understanding, understood, upbeat, upright, valued, vibrant, victorious, victory, virtuous, vital, vitalizing, wanted, watched over, wealthy, welcomed, whole, wholesome, willing, wonderful, wondrous, worthy, wow, youthful, zealous, amen. And with love and gratitude, I am so thankful to Dr. Emoto and his water experiments that led me to the reading of worthy words. Thank you all for joining me. And there's the reading of today's worthy words. Makes such a big difference. Yes, I'm ready for my day. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.